We'll now move to our questions of the witnesses, and just for folks' awareness, today is Thursday, so we have senators in and out coming from other hearings and other commitments. So we should have some senators here around 10:45, but it'll be about the time that Senator Braun and I are probably through our first round of questions. But I'll start with Gary Schildhorn. Gary, thanks again for sharing your experience. And we know that when it comes to these scams, these bad actors, or a better way to refer to them as criminals, will prey upon our vulnerabilities and our fear. They know we're human beings. They know they can advance their scam by playing on those fears and those vulnerabilities. With artificial intelligence, scammers can more easily and quickly and accurately tailor or target their scams to intended victims. The committee offers resources, including the fraud book, which I mentioned earlier, that share some red flags to watch out for and steps to take to prevent against scams. We're also releasing a brochure, which I have here, that will provide more information in a shorter form. But Gary, I wanted to ask you this: what do you think people should know about AI-assisted scams? Number one, what should they know, and how should they identify them? What are some of the red flags or indicators that you've learned since you were the target of this?
Thank you for the question. It's very difficult now to see red flags. The person that I spoke with, Barry Goldstein, spoke coherent, intelligent English. There were no grammatical errors or mispronunciation of words. His text messages back and forth were clear and responsive. When I was engaging him while I was trying to get law enforcement in, I told him that I was trying to find his name in Martindale-Hubbell, and for lawyers, that's where lawyer biographies are found. He sent me a biography that he had already had ready. So it's very difficult for you to see a sign that it is a scam. There is one way that I recognize as a red flag. When someone is asking you to send money either by cash or by gift cards or other untraceable methods, that's the red flag. That's when an antenna should go up and say, well, why aren't they just asking me to do a regular wire transfer from my bank to their bank? So in answer to your question, that is the main red flag that I see that a consumer could react to as a possible indication of a scam.
Yeah, I know that over the years, and among other things that our fraud book has talked about, is just in the context of certain kinds of scams that there are red flags, and I understand what you're saying. They're a lot harder to detect. For example, we used to say that, and it's still the case, that with these IRS scams that are somewhat related to what we're talking about, but now of greater sophistication. But one rule was, if someone calls you and says they're from the IRS on the telephone, it's your first contact, it's not the IRS. You'll always get something in writing. But I realize that's a rather simple rule, much harder to find the simple red flags with the sophistication of AI. Mr. Weissman, I know you've got a website, Scamicide, which features a tremendous amount of information about scams. You've been doing this for about 12 years, a scam of the day. And it's hard to believe you have that much content, but that tells you the gravity of the problem or the scope of it. Your work demonstrates how pervasive and persistent scammers are and how diverse their tactics are when targeting witnesses. This committee has been collecting data on scams targeting older adults for about 10 years now. We've seen trends that change and new technologies that emerge. And obviously some of those are set forth in the fraud book. But in the time that you've been running and operating the website, how have you seen technology change and tactics shift? And maybe what's your advice for us as we look forward down the road, especially with the advent of AI?
You mentioned when I started Scamicide, I wondered if I would have enough scams to do a new one every day. And after more than 4,400 scams, unfortunately, they don't stop. You know, the scams have been with us forever. The Nigerian email is just an update of a scam called the Spanish prisoner from the 1500s. And the cryptocurrency scams we see, even cryptocurrency pump and dumps, were done before. But you're right, the technology has changed it. It's changed it, the delivery systems, as far as robocalls. It's done it, the voice over internet protocol, where phones can be, messages can come in from all over the world over a computer. And the phone is still the way that seniors get the most scammed. And then there's even something called spoofing. So you mentioned the IRS, and you know it's not the IRS, which is the same line I've always told people. However, they look at their caller ID and they see the call is coming from the IRS, and so they trust it. And that's where my motto comes in, is trust me, you can't trust anyone. And AI has just enhanced that. And sort of what Tom was saying, anytime you are asked for personal information, anytime you are asked to make a payment of any kind, anytime you're asked to click on a link, you've got to be skeptical. You've got to hold back and check it out. But it's a nice rule that can be very difficult when these scammers, these scam artists, the only criminals we call artists, have a knowledge of psychology Freud would have envied, and they're able to manipulate us, and that's where we need to change our minds.
Thanks very much. Ranking Member Braun?